My wife Elena came home at 2:17 a.m., smelling like expensive cologne and lies. I know because I was sitting in my kitchen chair, nursing a lukewarm beer and watching the digital clock on the microwave tick away the minutes of our marriage. She thought I was asleep upstairs in our suburban Massachusetts home, probably dreaming about carburetors and oil changes like the simple mechanic she'd married 12 years ago. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Nick? Her voice carried that fake sweetness she used when she was about to feed me bullshit. What are you doing up, honey? I turned around slowly, taking in her appearance. Her yoga clothes were pristine, not a drop of sweat on that expensive athletic wear. Her hair was perfect, makeup still intact. Either she'd discovered the world's least strenuous yoga class, or my wife had been stretching something other than her hamstrings. Couldn't sleep, I said, keeping my voice neutral. How was your yoga retreat? Elena's smile flickered for just a second, just long enough for me to catch it. Oh, you know how these weekend intensives are? Very intense. I bet they are. I stood up, my 6-foot frame casting a shadow across our granite countertops. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller. Funny thing, though, Elena. I called the retreat center yesterday. They said they haven't had a weekend intensive in over 2 months. The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. Too quickly. You called? Nick, that's crazy behavior. Are you checking up on me now? Should I be? She laughed, but it sounded hollow in our silent house. This is ridiculous. I'm going to bed. Elena. She stopped at the kitchen doorway. Where were you, really? When she turned around, something had changed in her expression. The mask was slipping, and underneath it was someone I didn't recognize. Someone cold. You want to know the truth, Nick? Fine. I hired a private investigator to follow you 3 months ago. I was sure you were cheating on me with that little secretary at your garage. Turns out you're just as boring as I thought. Every night at Murphy's Tavern, every weekend working on cars. God, Nick, when did you become so predictable? The accusation hit me like a punch to the gut, but not for the reason she expected. She'd hired a PI to follow me while she was out screwing around. The audacity was breathtaking. So where were you tonight, Elena? With friends. Adult friends who don't spend their evenings talking about transmission fluid. She stormed upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with my thoughts and a growing certainty that my marriage was over. But I'm not the kind of man who goes down without a fight. If Elena wanted to play games, she'd pick the wrong mechanic to mess with. The next morning, I called Vince Russo, the private investigator Elena had mentioned. If he was good enough for her, he was good enough for me. Vince's office was exactly what you'd expect from a 60-year-old ex-cop who'd seen too much of the world's ugliness. Cigarette smoke hung in the air like fog, and his desk was buried under case files and empty coffee cups. So your wife hired me to tail you, and now you want me to tail her? Vince leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously under his weight. I gotta say, Nick, this is a first. Is that a problem? Not for me, but it might be for your bank account. Surveillance ain't cheap. I slid $500 across his desk. Will that cover a week? Vince's eyebrows went up. A mechanic with cash to burn. Either you're very good at fixing cars, or you've been planning this for a while. Let's just say I've been saving for a rainy day, and it looks like storm clouds are gathering. 3 days later, Vince called me at the garage. You're going to want to see these pictures, Nick, but maybe not on an empty stomach. We met at Murphy's Tavern, the dive bar where I'd been spending my evenings according to Elena's PI report. Vince slid a manila envelope across the scarred wooden table. Your wife's been busy, he said. Real busy. The first photo showed Elena walking into the Marriott downtown with a man I recognized immediately, Chad Vincent, owner of Blackstone Motors, the flashy used car dealership across town. Chad was everything I wasn't. Smooth, wealthy, and completely without moral boundaries. The second photo was taken through a hotel room window. Elena and Chad were locked in an embrace that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. There's more, Vince said quietly. The rest of the photos documented a pattern. Elena and Chad at restaurants, at his dealership after hours, at a cabin outside town. The final photo was a close-up of Elena's car parked at the cabin, her yoga mat visible in the back seat. Looks like she's been getting her exercise after all, Vince said with dark humor. I studied each photo carefully, feeling something cold and hard forming in my chest. Not heartbreak. That would come later. This was something else. Something that felt like the moment before you throw a punch. How long? I asked. Based on what I've seen, at least 6 months, maybe longer. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of coming home to my bed after being in his. Half a year of me working 60-hour weeks to pay for the house and the car and the lifestyle while she played house with Chad Vincent. There's something else, Nick. Vince pulled out his phone and showed me a text message thread. I managed to get these off her phone when she left it at the yoga studio. The messages were between Elena and Chad, and they made my blood run cold. Elena. He's getting suspicious. We need to be more careful. Chad. Or we could stop sneaking around. You could just leave him. Elena. It's not that simple. Nick's not smart, but he's stubborn. He won't make it easy. Chad. Then we make it easy for him. I know people who can help with that. Elena. What do you mean? Chad. Let me worry about it. Your husband won't be a problem much longer. I read the messages twice, then handed the phone back to Vince. When were these sent? Yesterday. So while I was lying awake wondering if my marriage could be saved, my wife and her lover were discussing ways to get rid of me. The cold thing in my chest grew larger, spreading through my veins like ice water. What are you thinking, Nick? Vince asked. I finished my beer and stood up. I'm thinking it's time Chad Vincent learned what happens when you mess with a mechanic's tools. My garage, Harper's Auto Repair, sits on the wrong side of town like a middle finger pointed at all the fancy dealerships with their shiny showrooms and slick salesmen. It's not much to look at. Concrete floors stained with decades of oil, fluorescent lights that flicker when it rains, and the persistent smell of motor oil and hard work. But it's mine, and it's where I do my best thinking. Andy Morrison, my 22-year-old apprentice, was already under the hood of a '98 Camaro when I arrived Monday morning. The kid had talent and loyalty, two qualities that were apparently rarer than I'd thought. Morning, boss, Andy called out, his voice muffled by the engine compartment. This Camaro's got a weird knock in the engine. Sounds like a rod bearing, I finished. Pull the oil pan and check the connecting rods. Andy's head popped up, grease smudged across his cheek. How'd you know that without even listening? 20 years of experience, kid. 20 years of listening to engines tell me their problems. I grabbed my coveralls from the hook by the office door. Speaking of problems, I need to ask you something. Shoot. How good are you at keeping your mouth shut? Andy straightened up, suddenly serious. Depends on what we're talking about. I looked around the garage, making sure we were alone. We're talking about Elena. Ah, shit. Andy wiped his hands on a rag. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. You knew? Nick, half the town knows. She's not exactly subtle about it. Last week, Mrs. Patterson from the diner saw her and Chad Vincent making out in his Mercedes behind the grocery store. In broad daylight. The humiliation burned in my throat. And nobody thought to tell me? Would you have believed us? Guys like Chad Vincent, they're smooth talkers. They make guys like us look like idiots. I figured you'd have to see it for yourself. Andy was right, and that made it worse. I'd been the last to know, the clueless husband working late while his wife played around with the town's biggest sleazeball. So, what's the plan? Andy asked. The plan is to show Chad Vincent that mechanics know how to fix more than just engines. We know how to break things, too. That afternoon, I drove past Blackstone Motors 3 times, studying the layout. Chad's dealership was everything mine wasn't, gleaming showroom, perfectly manicured lot, and prices that would make a working man weep. Chad's personal car, a pristine black Jaguar XF, sat in its reserved spot like a trophy. I parked across the street and called the dealership. Blackstone Motors, this is Carla speaking. Hi, Carla. This is Nick Harper from Harper's Auto Repair. Is Chad available? Oh, hi, Nick. Chad's actually out for the afternoon. Can I take a message? Perfect. Just tell him I called about that transmission work he mentioned. I'll try him tomorrow. Chad had never mentioned any transmission work, but Carla didn't know that. More importantly, I now knew Chad wouldn't be back today. At 6 p.m., when the dealership closed, I watched from my truck as the last employee left. Chad's Jaguar sat alone in the lot like a sitting duck. Breaking into the lot wasn't hard. The fence was more for show than security. Getting to Chad's car was even easier. The man was so arrogant he didn't even lock it. I popped the hood and went to work. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would cause an accident. Just a little sugar in the gas tank, some sand in the oil, and a few loose connections that would make his beautiful Jag run like a dying horse. When I was finished, I left a small gift on the driver's seat, a yoga mat with a note. Thought you might need this for all your stretching. Namaste, asshole. The next morning, I was drinking coffee in my office when my phone rang. Harper's Auto Repair. Nick Harper? The voice was smooth, confident, and completely unfamiliar. Speaking. This is Chad Vincent from Blackstone Motors. I think we need to talk. About what, Chad? About my car and about your wife. The line went quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I don't know what you mean, I said finally. Sure you do. Meet me at Murphy's Tavern tonight at 8. Come alone. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then started laughing. Chad Vincent thought he could intimidate me with his smooth voice and his ultimatums. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Murphy's Tavern at 8 p.m. was exactly what you'd expect. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and the kind of clientele that minded their own business. I arrived early and took a corner booth where I could watch the door. Chad walked in at exactly 8 o'clock, looking like he'd stepped out of a men's fashion magazine. Expensive suit, perfect hair, and a smile that probably cost more than most people's cars. He spotted me immediately and walked over with the confidence of a man who'd never lost a fight. Nick Harper, I presume. He slid into the booth across from me without being invited. Chad Vincent, I presume. I took a sip of my beer. Nice suit. Must be nice having all that money to throw around. It is, actually. His smile never wavered. It's also nice having a beautiful woman to spend it on. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. The entire bar seemed to go quiet, though I knew that was just my imagination. Is that what we're here to talk about? I asked. Your spending habits? We're here to talk about boundaries, Nick, and respect. You vandalized my car. That crosses a line. Prove it. Chad's smile flickered. What? Prove I vandalized your car. You got any evidence? Witnesses? Security footage? I don't need evidence. I know it was you. Knowing and proving are two different things, Chad. But let's say, hypothetically, that someone did mess with your car. Maybe that someone was sending you a message. And what message would that be? I leaned forward, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Stay away from my wife. Chad laughed. Actually laughed. Your wife? Nick, I hate to break this to you, but Elena made her choice. She chose me. Did she now? She did. In fact, she's been very clear about her feelings regarding your marriage. Very clear about wanting out. The words should have hurt, but they didn't. Instead, they just fed the cold anger that had been growing in my chest since I saw those photos. Well then, I said, standing up. I guess we'll see about that. I turned to walk away, but Chad's voice stopped me. Nick. I looked back. This doesn't have to get ugly. Elena and I, we're in love. Real love. Not whatever tired arrangement you two have been living with. You could make this easy on everyone and just step aside. Or what? Chad's smile turned predatory. Or I make it hard on you. Very hard. And that's when I snapped. I turned around and walked back to the booth, my hands clenched into fists. The entire bar was watching now, sensing violence in the air like animals before a storm. You want to make it hard on me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Chad started to stand, but I was faster. My right hand shot out and slapped him across the face. Not a punch, just an open-handed slap that echoed through the bar like a gunshot. Chad stumbled backward, his hand flying to his cheek. The perfect composure was gone, replaced by shock and humiliation. A few guys at the bar started laughing. You son of a bitch! Chad lunged at me, but I was ready. I sidestepped and let his momentum carry him into the booth. He crashed into the table, sending beer bottles flying. The laughter got louder. Easy there, Romeo, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Wouldn't want to mess up that pretty face. Elena might not recognize you. Chad struggled to his feet, his expensive suit now decorated with beer and shame. His face was red, whether from the slap or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. This isn't over, he snarled. No, I agreed. It's just getting started. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern to a chorus of cheers and catcalls, leaving Chad Vincent to pick up the pieces of his dignity. Outside, the night air felt cool against my skin, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. But I knew Chad was right about one thing. This was just the beginning. Elena was waiting for me when I got home, pacing around our living room like a caged animal. Her yoga clothes had been replaced by a silk blouse and designer jeans, the kind of outfit she wore when she wanted to look sophisticated and in control. We need to talk, she said the moment I walked through the door. Do we? I hung my keys on the hook by the door and walked to the kitchen, because I thought you'd made yourself pretty clear about where things stand. Chad called me. He told me about your little scene at Murphy's. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer. Did he mention the part where he threatened me, or just the part where I slapped some sense into him? Elena's eyes flashed with anger. You hit him? I slapped him. there's a difference, though I'm thinking about upgrading to a punch next time. There won't be a next time, Nick. This stops now. I turned around slowly, studying my wife's face. 12 years of marriage, and I was just now seeing her clearly. The way she held herself, the calculated expressions, the complete lack of remorse or shame. She wasn't the woman I'd fallen in love with. Maybe she never had been. You're right, I said. This does stop now, but not the way you think. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Vince had taken. Elena's face went white as she scrolled through them. Where did you get these? Same place you got your information about me. Turns out private investigators work for anyone with cash. Elena sank onto the couch, the phone trembling in her hands. Nick, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain 6 months of lies? Can you explain coming home to my bed after being in his? Can you explain discussing ways to get rid of me? Her head snapped up. What are you talking about? I showed her the text messages. This time, Elena's composure cracked completely. Those are taken out of context, she whispered. Are they? Because it looks to me like you and your boyfriend were planning to make me disappear. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Elena? What is it exactly? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photos on my phone. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were real or just another performance. I was going to leave you, she said. I was going to ask for a divorce. When? Soon, after I figured out how to do it without destroying both our lives. How thoughtful of you. Nick, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can what? Pretend the last 6 months never happened? Pretend I don't know about Chad? Pretend you actually give a damn about our marriage. Elena stood up, and I saw a flash of the woman she really was, cold, calculating, and completely without remorse. Fine, she said. You want the truth? Here's the truth. I haven't been happy in this marriage for years. You work all the time, you smell like motor oil, and you have no ambition beyond fixing other people's cars. Chad offers me a life I actually want. Then go have it. What? You heard me. Go have your life with Chad. But don't expect me to make it easy for you. Elena's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means this house is in both our names. It means our bank accounts are joint. It means if you want out, you're going to have to fight for it. You can't stop me from leaving, Nick. No, but I can make sure you leave with nothing. I walked upstairs, leaving Elena alone in the living room. Behind me, I heard her calling Chad, her voice high and panicked. Good. Let her panic. Let them both panic. The next morning, I drove to the bank and moved half of our joint savings into a separate account. It was perfectly legal. The money was as much mine as hers. Then I called a lawyer, a real shark named Patricia Williams, who had a reputation for destroying cheating spouses in divorce court. Mr. Harper, Patricia said after I'd shown her the photos and text messages, your wife has made several critical errors. The adultery, the planning, the threats, it all works in your favor. What are my options? Many. We can file for divorce on grounds of adultery, which in Massachusetts can affect property division and alimony. We can also pursue a restraining order based on those text messages about making you disappear. I don't want a restraining order. I want something better. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Such as? I want them to destroy themselves. And I think I know how to make that happen. That afternoon, I paid a visit to Ricky Martinez at Murphy's Tavern. Ricky was the kind of guy who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. He was also the unofficial town crier. Anything you told Ricky would be common knowledge within 24 hours. Nick, Ricky called out when I walked in. Heard you gave Chad Vincent a love tap last night. About time somebody knocked that pretty boy down a peg. Just defending my honor, I said, taking a seat at the bar. Your honor? What did he do? Insult your transmission work? Something like that. I ordered a beer and leaned closer to Ricky. Can I tell you something in confidence? Ricky's eyes lit up. Nothing made him happier than being trusted with a secret, especially one he could share later. Sure, Nick. What's going on? I found out Elena's been cheating on me with Chad Vincent. Ricky's jaw dropped. No shit? You're Elena? My Elena. Been going on for months, apparently. They've been meeting at that cabin outside town, the one Chad rents for his fishing trips. Jesus, Nick. I'm sorry, man. That's rough. The worst part? I heard from a friend at the bank that Chad's been having some financial troubles. Apparently he's been using the dealership's money to pay for his extracurricular activities. Hotels, dinners, gifts for married women. None of this was true, but Ricky didn't know that. And by tomorrow, neither would the rest of the town. That's fraud, isn't it? Ricky asked. If it's true, yeah. But who knows? Maybe it's just rumors. I finished my beer and left, knowing that by closing time, half the town would know about Chad's alleged financial improprieties and Elena's affair. Small towns are like echo chambers. Rumors bounce around until they become indistinguishable from facts. My phone rang as I was driving home. It was Vince. "Nick, you need to see this. Can you meet me at my office?" 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Vince's cluttered desk while he showed me a video on his laptop. "I set up a camera at the yoga studio like you asked," he said. "Figured if your wife was using yoga as her cover story, she might slip up there." The video showed Elena and Chad in what appeared to be a private yoga session after hours. Except they weren't doing any yoga poses I recognized. They were doing things that would make a porn star blush. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. "It gets better," Vince said. "Or worse, depending on how you look at it. Watch this." He fast-forwarded to another part of the video. Elena and Chad were getting dressed, and I could hear their conversation clearly. "What if Nick finds out?" Elena was saying. "He won't, and if he does, we'll deal with it. I've got connections, Elena, people who can make problems disappear." "You mean hurt him?" "I mean whatever it takes. Nick Harper is not going to ruin this for us." Chad pulled Elena close and kissed her. "Besides, who's going to believe a grease monkey over a successful businessman?" I felt something snap inside my chest. Not break, snap, like a rubber band stretched too far. "Can you make copies of this?" I asked Vince. "Already done. What are you planning?" "I'm planning to show Chad Vincent what happens when you underestimate a grease monkey." That night, I uploaded the yoga studio video to a dozen anonymous email accounts. Then I sent copies to Chad's wife, his business partners, the local newspaper, and every yoga instructor in town. I also sent a copy to Elena's boss at the insurance company where she worked as an HR manager. But that was just the appetizer. The main course would come tomorrow. I spent the rest of the evening in my garage, working on a special project. Andy found me there at midnight, hunched over my workbench with a collection of electronic components spread out in front of me. "Boss, what are you working on?" I looked up, my eyes probably bloodshot from strain and exhaustion. "I'm building a mousetrap, Andy, a very special mousetrap." "For mice?" "For rats." By morning, the video had done its work. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m., reporters, neighbors, even my mother-in-law calling to ask if the rumors were true. I let them all go to voicemail. Elena's phone, on the other hand, never stopped ringing. I could hear her upstairs, alternating between angry whispers and full-blown shouting matches. Chad's wife had apparently seen the video. So had Elena's boss. So had half the town. At 8 a.m., Elena came downstairs looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her hands were shaking. "You did this," she said. It wasn't a question. "Did what?" "You know what. The video, the emails, all of it." I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Nick. I know it was you." "Prove it." Elena slammed her hand on the table, making the coffee cup jump. "My boss put me on administrative leave pending an investigation into my conduct. Chad's wife is filing for divorce. The whole town is talking about us. Sounds rough. This is your fault." I looked up at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "No, Elena, this is your fault. You made the choices. You had the affair. You got caught. I just made sure everyone knew about it. You're destroying my life. I'm returning the favor." Elena stared at me for a long moment, her chest heaving with rage and desperation. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. "Chad, it's me. We need to talk. Now." She hung up and looked at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed. "It's not." After Elena left, I called Andy and told him to meet me at the garage. We had work to do. "What kind of work?" Andy asked when he arrived. I showed him the electronic device I'd been building the night before. It looked like a small radio transmitter with a battery pack and an antenna. "What is it?" "It's a broadcasting device. Very simple, very effective. You attach it to any audio-video system, and it can override the signal and broadcast whatever you want." Andy's eyes widened. "That's illegal, isn't it?" "Probably. Good thing we're not going to use it for anything illegal." "We're not?" "Nope. We're just going to use it to make sure Chad Vincent gets the public humiliation he deserves." I explained my plan to Andy, and his initial concern gave way to grudging admiration. "Boss, that's either brilliant or completely insane." "Maybe both." That afternoon, I drove to Blackstone Motors and parked across the street. Chad's Jaguar was back in its spot, apparently repaired from my earlier sabotage. The dealership looked busy, potential customers walking around the lot, salesmen in cheap suits trying to make deals. I called the dealership from my cell phone. Blackstone Motors, this is Carla. Hi, Carla. This is Nick Harper again. Is Chad available now? Oh, hi, Nick. Actually, Chad's been trying to reach you. He said something about meeting to discuss a business proposition? A business proposition? That's what he said. He seemed pretty excited about it. Want me to transfer you? No, that's okay. I'll tell him I'll come by around 5 after you close. Will do. I hung up and smiled. Chad wanted to meet? Perfect. I'd give him a meeting he'd never forget. At 4:30, I watched the last customer leave Blackstone Motors. At 4:45, the salesman started heading home. At 5 o'clock, only Chad's Jaguar and Carla's Honda remained in the lot. I waited until Carla left, then drove around to the back of the dealership. The rear entrance was unlocked. Either Chad was expecting me, or he was more careless than I'd thought. I found him in his office, sitting behind a massive mahogany desk that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He looked up when I walked in, and I was surprised to see that he was smiling. Nick, thanks for coming. Please have a seat. I remained standing. What do you want, Chad? I want to make you an offer. A very generous offer. I'm listening. Chad leaned back in his leather chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. This situation we're in, it's gotten out of hand. Elena and I never meant for things to go this far. You mean you never meant to get caught? Fair enough. But we did get caught, and now we're all paying the price. Elena's lost her job, my wife is filing for divorce, and you're the laughingstock of the town. Am I? Come on, Nick. Everyone knows your wife was cheating on you. Everyone knows you couldn't keep her satisfied. That's got to hurt. I felt the familiar cold anger spreading through my chest, but I kept my voice calm. What's your offer, Chad? $50,000. Cash. You give Elena an uncontested divorce, you stop spreading rumors about my business, and we all move on with our lives. 50,000? That's more than you make in a year at that garage of yours. I pretended to consider it. What happens if I say no? Chad's smile turned predatory. Then things get difficult for you. Very difficult. I have friends in this town, Nick. Important friends. Friends who could make life hard for a small business owner. You mean you'd try to destroy my garage? I mean I'd succeed in destroying your garage, and probably you along with it. I nodded slowly, as if I was weighing my options. Can I think about it? Sure, but don't think too long. This offer expires tomorrow. Fair enough. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, Chad, one more thing. What's that? I pulled out my phone, showing Chad the live audio feed of our conversation, timestamps included. Thanks for the confession, I said. Extortion and witness tampering, both felonies. Chad's face went white. You recorded? Streamed live to the cloud, unbreakable. You son of a... Language, Chad. I walked out, pausing. Leave town, or you're done. Later, Vince showed me Chad's odometer fraud documents. Big-time fraud, he said. Jail time. His finances? Living beyond means. Fraud funds his affair. Deliver this anonymously, I told Vince. Next morning, Chad's dealership swarmed with investigators. Then, I hacked his showroom TVs, broadcasting Chad and Elena's yoga footage. Customers fled. Investigators noted. Chad's reputation died. Sipping coffee across the street, I felt justice taste sweeter than revenge. Elena texted, You've gone too far. I replied, It ends with you both leaving. Chad charged me, screaming. I dodged his swing, dropping him. Close your dealership, pay back victims, leave, I said. Or else. That evening, Elena packed silently. You've destroyed us, she said. You destroyed yourselves, I replied. She left. I sat with a beer, at peace. Tomorrow, divorce papers. Tomorrow, Chad's arrest. Tonight, freedom. The end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.